Hello. For my political campaign presentation assignment, I chose Dick Gregory. I chose Dick Gregory because he's unconventional and he also isn't popular. In 1968, Dick Gregory ran for president. However, I was introduced to him in the new millennium. I was on YouTube scrolling, and one of his interviews randomly popped into my algorithm. So I watched it and I was immediately intrigued. But what stood out to me was that Dick Gregory also mentioned that he ran for president and actually could have been a potential candidate to be elected in. And at first I thought it strange and I thought he was just talking until I actually began to research it for myself. And in fact, in 1968, Dick Gregory did run for president as a write-in candidate. Not only was Dick Gregory unconventional because of his attempts to engage the public, but he was a comedian. So people didn't take him seriously. They thought that this whole thing was a spoof. But his way of connecting with people through his own life experiences actually drew the people to him. Dick Gregory was born October 12th, 1932. And he was born in a time where it was tumultuous. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 has not happened yet. There's still segregation, there's still racism, there's still biases, there's still things that he had to overcome. Even though he was not just a comedian, but before that or prior to that, he was in the army. He worked and he was educated, he understood, and he went in accordance to the policies of the land. He did obey the laws of the land, but his raunchy style and comedic nature didn't make him the ideal candidate, even though he had all of the qualifications, especially according to the Constitution, being over 35 and a citizen of the United States of America. So he was more than well aware of the situation going on. What people did not realize, or what the elite social classes did not realize, was that connecting with the people on an individual level would help to bring in the votes. He had wrote a book entitled Write Me In, meaning that he wasn't running this political campaign as a Democrat or as a Republican, but he was running as a write-in candidate. And that speaks volumes to the voices of the American people who are overlooked sometimes or don't have upper echelon or a part of the bourgeoisie class. But they're just regular American citizens who want freedom, equality, and justice. Dick Gregory was famously anti-establishment, meaning if you said he had to do it, he had to know why. There was no just you tell me what I'm supposed to do and it gets done if it doesn't navigate alongside his moral compass. He would regularly criticize capitalism and what he believed was the political deception of America's two-party system. His book, Write Me In, was the slogan and drive behind his run. Dick Gregory was known as an activist and a comedian, as I said before. But a president was something that traditional American people did not see coming. With his ways of engaging the crowd and drawing communities, he was able to not only make people laugh, but make people think. He always went against the grain in regards to social concepts, especially the ones that affected his community. This was alarming to the climate of that time, which caused him to also be on the FBI's radar, alongside Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X, the list goes on. Him being an American male of black descent in the times where civil rights were just being established throughout the entire land was controversial as well as jarring. Gregory's campaign was based squarely around his opposition to the Vietnam War, but was more broadly an attempt to critique the limitations of the two-party system and the deeply rooted links between corruption, political power, and American capitalism. This is according to E.J. West in his article written on July 1st, 2019, Pushing Beyond the Two-Party Systems. as well as how Dick Gregory's 1968 presidential bid shook America. Dick Gregory he had a dollar bill with his face on it saying that $1 is equal to one vote and it all counts. This inspired the community and let them know that their voice matters. 1968's presidential election was shaken up by Dick Gregory being a write-in candidate and the impact that he actually had. In America, we are granted certain freedoms, certain liberties, and certain rights. And when those rights are infringed upon by a class of people who don't understand the everyday struggle, who don't understand the working class struggle, then it is time for someone to speak up and speak out. Now, was America ready for Dick Gregory? Not at the time. Is America ready for a candidate like Dick Gregory now? Who's to say? But what I can say is that from reading articles in the Jackson Advocate of Jacksonville, Mississippi from 1963, to seeing the climate of the United States now after the DEI initiatives have been taken away from all businesses essentially and schools, but still having Title VII, and realizing how all of these things are still relevant to today. Was his run important? Absolutely. Was his paraphernalia, was the way that he advocated and the way that he promoted his political campaign imperative to how we should be on the grassroots and running and going door to door? Absolutely relevant till today's time. His 1968 run was not just something of that time, but to have that mindset, to have that drive, to have that tenacity that no matter what, you're still going to run to do what's right. It's always needed. To whom much is given, much is required. And if God has granted you the serenity to run a race, I admonish you to run that race with patience, similar to how Dick Gregory and the people before him and the people who came after him have done.